Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Well, being gay in Nigeria has never been easy, but life for homosexuals in Africa's most populous country has just become a lot harder. Some say almost impossible, with a new law that punishes same-sex marriage with up to 14 years in prison. And it makes support for gay associations or clubs a criminal offense. Now, in the Muslim-dominated north of Nigeria, where Islamic Sharia law has broad support, gay people can be legally stoned to death. And Nigeria is not alone. Uganda recently passed a similar anti-gay measure, reflecting a trend that applies across broad portions of Africa. Now, my guest today, Joseph Okoro, he's a Nigerian human rights activist, and he's also the former director of the Initiative for Equal Rights in Nigeria. Welcome to the interview.
Thanks for having me.
The president of your country, Goodluck Jonathan, he has not publicly expressed his views yet on this law. He hasn't come out and said anything. His spokesman, however, has said something, and I want to quote this for our viewers and get your reaction. He said, "This law is in line with the people's cultural and religious inclination, and it reflects the beliefs and orientation of Nigerian people." He's basically saying there, Nigerians agree with this law. They believe that gays are abnormal, even inhuman. They don't really deserve to exist. How do you fight that?
Well, my reaction to that would be that what has been referred to culture is religion. And this religion, the major religions in Nigeria is Christianity and Islam. And of course, as we know all over the world, Christianity and Islam do not allow for homosexuality. And this is the culture that has been referred to. But if we look into the indigenous culture within Nigeria, there are histories of cohabitation of same-sex people. I have read a lot of literature from Eastern Nigeria where two women can cohabit and can found a family. But this is not something that has been referred to as our culture, but this is indeed our culture. But when I hear this kind of thing, I hear religion, which is Christianity and Islam, which I do not accept as a culture, really.
And so I'll underline the fact that you have a really deeply conservative evangelical Christian South, right? And then you have a Muslim-dominated North where Sharia law is in effect.
Yeah, this is correct.
Essentially. But you've had a lot of online reaction in Nigeria. Nigerians writing in, saying things like, being gay, being homosexual is wrong. It's even satanic. And you're a human rights activist, and I'm just wondering, you're up against such a deeply entrenched belief system. How do you fight that, especially under the current conditions right now?
Well, my first reaction to that is that as a human rights activist, I believe that everybody has the right to freedom of expression and to the opinion. But the truth is that the matter on the ground is that people need to be protected regardless of who they are. And that is the point. It is not about what I believe as a person, but it's about protecting the right of the other person.
This isn't just about being gay or not gay. This is universally this endangered society.
Yeah, which is kind of related to what people might feel about homosexuality. So it does not matter what you feel about homosexuality. What matters is that the society, a secular country, requires to protect its citizens regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity.
And I'd assume that in the Nigerian constitution that those protections are somehow enshrined.
Section 42 absolutely expresses the freedom to life and all other fundamental human rights, of which LGBT people are amongst.
You're from Lagos,
Yes.
the commercial capital, I suppose, not the capital of Nigeria. It's a giant city, sprawling, 15 million people. Now, presumably, if Nigeria is no different than any other country in the world, there's a sizable gay population there. What's the gay culture like in Lagos? Is there any place you can go in Lagos and be openly gay?
Well, I would say no, because there is no one place that you can actually identify to be a gay club or a gay bar. And I actually expressed that in my blog, in one of the articles that I wrote, that in my whole life in Nigeria, in Lagos, I have never been or heard of a place being identified as a gay club. Of course, as a community, people can conveying themselves within a certain place. But the gay community is mobile. So today it's eating point A, tomorrow eating
changes.
point B, and then it changes.
No one
so
would- no
so
one
there's no gay neighborhood. There's no gay bar. There's no gay club.
You would never see a travel guide to Lagos, Nigeria, saying nightlife gay scene
No.
in Lagos.
No,
Unheard of.
To the best of my knowledge, no.
And I'm just wondering, there's a large number of people in Nigeria also. HIV/AIDS has been a giant issue, a big problem. Some estimates have 3.5 million people infected with HIV.
Absolutely.
The medical programs right now that are in place, what do you see happening as a result? How do you protect and preserve those programs, if at all?
Well, for me, I cannot just fathom how possible it would be to protect those programs, because the thing is that we need to recognize the intersectionality when it comes to programming. And then when we talk about depriving homosexuals of service provision, what does that mean? Does that mean that if I'm effeminate or I dress somehow, my doctor cannot provide me some certain services because of how I look or where I have my infection? Because it could be presumed to have been as a result of some certain sexual practices that I've indulged myself in. So this is a problem. This is a problem. And unfortunately, right now, the NACA, that's the National Agency on the Control of AIDS, have not made any public statement on that, on what the impact of this law would be on HIV and AIDS program. So a lot of HIV and AIDS programmers are actually apprehensive and do not know what to do in terms of providing services to the LGBT community, particularly men who have sex with men.
Very uncertain right now. You were telling me just before we went to air that this law came under the radar. The parliament had debated it. It fell on the president's desk on January 7th. He signed the law the same day. And the way you told me you found out about it was from a blog. Most people,
Right.
It wasn't reported right away.
It was funny because on the 13th in the morning on Monday, I started getting a lot of emails and about the bill being signed into law, and I couldn't believe that. When I first saw the news, it was from a blog, so I said no. I do not read news blog because there are a lot of people who just post things.
You thought it was a
on the
fallacy.
blog. So I thought it was. I mean, it was, for me, it was invalid at that point. But a lot of indications started to point towards the truth of the rumor that was going around. And then I received a copy of a document that has a stamp of the presidency saying that it was received on the 7th of January. And then the news going around actually revealed that the president signed that bill the same day.
He's just waiting for it.
I couldn't understand how a bill of such sensitivity could have been signed within a space of a few hours.
The U.S., Britain, a lot of European human rights groups have been extremely critical of this law. They've condemned it. Do you think that this international pressure will perhaps bring the Nigerian government to change its position, to perhaps repeal the law, to back down, or no?
Well, my personal position is that we live in a global village. We live in a global community. So whatever happens in Syria, whatever happens in Pakistan is my business. Every other person have the right to express their misunderstanding or their condemnation relating to certain things that happen in other parts of the world.
But will it help you as a human rights activist in Nigeria, the international criticism? Will that help you?
We encourage the condemnation. We encourage the solidarity.
Uganda is one country which recently passed a similar law, anti-gay legislation. I was looking at a map of Africa before the show, and I was really surprised at the number of countries that have really harsh anti-gay laws on their books. What is that? For an outsider, do you just say, is this an African phenomenon? Why? Why so many countries have these laws?
Well, the first thing is that I wouldn't say it's an African phenomenon because again, it is happening in some part of Asia, and then you know about the propaganda stuff in Russia as well.
Absolutely.
And then all of this is happening in Africa, in some countries in Africa. What I see here is religious fundamentalism, upon which people draw their philosophy in order to condemn the rights of homosexuals. And I think this is what we can call the phenomenon. It is unfortunate that these kind of thing is more predominant in Africa. I know that, I mean, Uganda, the National Assembly just passed the bill, and then a few hours ago, I read that the president refused to sign it.
Refused to sign in Uganda.
That's good. I mean, that's a wise move. I would have expected my president to act as wisely as that.
I would like to note that 14 years of jail is the maximum sentence right now for same-sex marriage. But in the North, where Islamic Sharia law is supported by much of the population, you could be stoned to death.
Well, the thing also is that same-sex marriage is one thing. The practice of homosexuality is another. The practice of homosexuality have been illegal in Nigeria for many years, even before I was born. Okay. So, and that law prescribes 14 years of jail term. According to section 214 and 217, 14 years jail term for anyone who is convicted of the crime to have engaged in homosexuality.
But that's the general law. But the North,
that's the sodomy in the, I mean, as a federal law. In the north of Nigeria, of course, there is a law that criminalizes the act, not marriage, the act of homosexuality up to death sentence. Of course, the Sharia law, for those who are very cognizant about Sharia law, it's a very, very complex law. So you cannot easily get convicted under the Sharia law. You need evidences, you need witnesses, and then there's certain things that you have to go through before you can be convicted. But of course, the 12 states in northern Nigeria prescribes up to death sentence.
Up to death. And that's a very negative note, but we're going to have to leave it there, Joseph Okoro. You're a Nigerian human rights activist. We've been talking about a new, very harsh law which expands on already restrictive laws in Nigeria against same-sex marriage, homosexuality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
It's not an easy task, I can see from what you've told me today. Thanks to all of you for watching the interview here on France 24.